unionist majority in the Assembly has been ended, and the notion of a permanent or a perpetual unionist majority has been demolished.
For decades, politics in Northern Ireland has effectively been a sectarian headcount between Catholics and Protestants. The greater number of Protestants always ensured a unionist majority in the Legislative Assembly, until now. Catholic nationalists have made major strides in recent snap elections. The vote was called after a renewable energy scheme-turned-scandal known as Cash for Ash. It further called into question the competence of the dominant Democratic Union Party. But it was Brexit that helped to mobilize the vote of nationalist Catholics, who for decades have been growing in number, a trend that has diminished the Protestant unionist majority. Now Sinn Fein, once considered the political wing of the Irish Republican Army, has made significant gains.
We're going directly to the Europeans and saying we believe that there should be a special status for us within the EU. The majority of the people here, and of course in Scotland as well, want to stay within Europe.
In 1998, 3 decades of sectarian violence ended with the Good Friday Agreement.
To start that healing process.
And unionist and nationalist parties have shared power ever since. Now they'll have to do it again and form a government within the month, or face the prospect of direct rule by British Parliament. But beyond the immediate pressures lies a political landscape forever altered, and one where Ireland's reunification seems possible for the first time in a generation. Randolph Noble, The Newsmakers.
Well, joining me now from Bristol in the UK is Mick Fealty. He's the founding editor of Slugger O'Toole, a news and opinion website focusing on Northern Ireland. Mick, thanks so much for joining us. Many people look at those election results in Northern Ireland and they ask the question, is a united Ireland now more of a possibility?
In the sense that a united Ireland has always been, really, in most of our lifetimes, a remote possibility. It is now slightly less remote. But really what's happened in these elections has been a levelling up between the historic majority politics of unionism, those favouring a continuing union with the United Kingdom, and those in favour of reunification. So that's really what's happened. In the overall results, the nationalist parties have gone up by about 4%, and the unionist parties have gone down about 2%. In terms of share of vote, it's not huge. That extra 2%, in a sense, has been about crushing the sort of leftist parties, the social interest parties, if you like, on the fringes. And the effect has been to close the gap between the major unionist party, the DUP, and the major nationalist party, Sinn Fein.
And looking at some of the background to this, there was criticism of First Minister Arlene Foster when she said she was not keen on the protection of the Irish language and so on and so forth. Just why and how did she and the party mess up so badly? Did they misjudge the voters?
Well, that's an interesting story. It's important to know that the government really only consisted before Christmas of Sinn Fein and the DUP. So they were effectively partners in government, with all the other smaller parties sitting on an opposition, and an opposition that came in after the last election, which was only May last year. I think everything seemed to be plain sailing for the DUP. Sinn Fein seemed to be cooperating. And then a scandal hit. The BBC, now a scandal that was in the background since last July, but the BBC put out a very controversial documentary on a scheme that she had been responsible for previously as a minister for business. And the details of that scheme seem to be very damning of her as a competent minister. At first, Sinn Fein played along, supported her, but then just before Christmas, when the opposition parties brought forward a motion of confidence or no confidence, that seemed to break the whole arrangement apart. And from that point onwards, really, Mrs. Foster seemed not really to be able to deal with the crisis with any equanimity. And from that point onwards, they just seemed to go completely into free fall.
Do you expect British Prime Minister Theresa May to be worried, given the atmosphere? So you have, a hard Brexit on the horizon, the Scots wanting to maybe have another referendum, and then maybe the Irish want to have independence here. With all of this in mind, might she be freaking out that maybe the Good Friday Agreement and everything that came with it might be about to unravel some way down the road? Well,
I think the unraveling of the Good Friday Agreement is kind of unlikely. Even Sinn Fein have said that they don't want to fundamentally renegotiate that deal. And there's good reasons for that. The immense amount of political capital that went into framing the Good Friday Agreement is not available to any British, Irish, or even US administration to bring to bear on trying to recreate a new settlement. We're still a very long way off having a majority in favour of a united Ireland. Really, if you look back at the last sort of 14 years from the election in 2003, what's happened is political unionism has lost about 7% support, but that hasn't gone directly across to nationalism. That has gone to build up a kind of a block of about 10% in the middle of people who frankly don't care about the Constitution one way or the other. So in a sense, there is a ballast within the community at the moment that I think will give us a stay of execution on that constitutional crisis. Will Mrs. May be dismayed, upset? Well, she hasn't shown any sign of it yet. She's very much seems to be cast in the same mold as, say, Mrs. Merkel in Germany, kind of unflappable and very focused on business as usual in Westminster. She's refused to come over to firefight this one, sending her Secretary of State, James Brokenshire, instead. And I think she certainly won't be panicking anytime soon.
Tell me how they're viewing this in the Republic of Ireland.
With some dismay, I think. Really, all anybody in the Republic can think about is Brexit, because of course it's all very well for the United Kingdom to say that they're going. The Republic of Ireland is in a very, very difficult position. On one hand, it has a voice in terms of the European Union and what terms are dictated to the United Kingdom in terms of how it leaves. But on the other hand, they're also, since trade with the United Kingdom is enormous for the Republic of Ireland compared with any other individual country in the European Union, they're really fearful that the economic ties, not just north and south between the two parts of the island, but east and west, connections with the City of London, financial institutions, and the food export market is absolutely enormous in that regard. So any instability here, I think, and the loss particularly, I think, of an official voice from Belfast that can input into the UK governmental machinery, I think, is a massive loss as far as the Irish political interest is concerned.
And just very finally, so looking at Sinn Fein and the Democratic Unionist Party, they've got, what, 3 weeks to reach a power-sharing consensus. If they don't, then London rules directly. Nobody's going to allow that to happen, are they?
No, I think you're absolutely right. In terms of how the legislation is set out, they have merely 3 weeks. But as a management facility, the Secretary of State has considerable leeway in terms of lengthening that period. Okay. So at his discretion. But how long is a reasonable period of time before he either calls an election or decides to put the thing into either warm storage, in which MLAs and public representatives continue to get their salaries and their expenses, or cold storage, in which everything just gets switched off? That second might be a motivating factor to get everybody around the table and concentrate minds.
Okay, Mick, this was fascinating. Good to learn from you. Good to talk to you. Hope to have you on the program again. Mick Fealty joining us there.